Dave Chappelle knows what he knows. Yes, he's an accomplished performer, a funny comedian, a wealthy guy.
I have quiet please money at best.
But there's a certain simplicity to everything he seems to do. Do you ever go through a drive-thru and the workers get your order wrong, but it ends up tasting pretty good? Maybe something you've never ordered before, but now you will? That can be what it feels like with Chappelle. Most comedians have a certain tone or style, and that's what they stick with. That's cool. I imagine finding that sweet spot is hard to do as a comic. Chappelle stuff, though, well, it's more like a salad bowl.
I really wish I didn't say that shit.
Some of his sets are casual, some are upbeat and energetic, some are barely funny. No matter what, though, he's charismatic. That's why when he spoke about his gripes over the last couple of months, people listened. He explained how Viacom wasn't paying him royalties for his own TV series, Chappelle Show, and he asked for help. Chappelle said he signed a contract that allowed Viacom to do that.
I was having dinner with my agent celebrating a deal that they told me was lucrative, but I later learned fucking sucked.
But it wasn't right that he wasn't being paid for his own work.
I didn't think so either.
Chappelle's Show can be streamed on CBS All Access, HBO Max, and Netflix, but it wasn't on any of those platforms for a bit. That's because he asked for help. Not from the networks. He cut through all that clerical, pedantic stuff. He went to his fans.
I said, I'm going to my real boss, and I came to you because I know where my power lies. I asked you to stop watching the show, and thank God Almighty for you, you did.
He wanted to get paid for the work that he did. He finally got his money, and not by jumping through corporate hoops. Simplicity is what Chappelle knows, and that's his power. The nuance of the story is Chappelle's to tell, so if you want his full perspective, I won't co-opt that from him, but I can give a rough outline.
What have you heard?
Chappelle's Show was a big hit when it came out in 2003, and its popularity never really declined.
Doesn't it bring back good memories?
When Chappelle returned to the spotlight after a massive deal with Netflix for new specials, it makes sense that platforms would want to capitalize on Chappelle being such a big name again. Like I said, though, he wasn't paid royalties for people streaming the show because of his initial contract, so he asked all of his fans to boycott him.
Silencio! Ungawa! Thank you.
Not the companies, not the streaming platforms. He knew that if nobody watched his show on those platforms, it would catch the attention of Netflix and HBO Max and, most importantly, Viacom, the owners of CBS All Access. Long story short, it worked.
That's some cold shit.
HBO and Netflix took the show down until Chappelle was able to negotiate a deal with Viacom to get paid for the streams and residuals and whatnot.
Finally, after all these years, I can finally say to Comedy Central, it's been a pleasure doing business with you.
Now, I'm certainly not naive enough to believe these networks honored Chappelle's wishes out of the goodness of their hearts. They're businesses, and their goal is to make money. Not having Chappelle on the platform makes them less money. Netflix in particular had the most to lose. Chappelle signed a big old contract with Netflix in 2016 for some specials, with the New York Post reporting it to be worth $20 million per special. Though the New York Post was the only place reporting that as far as I can tell, so take that number with a grain of salt.
Man, this place fucking sucks!
With that being the case, a falling out with Chappelle would hurt Netflix the most, so honoring his wishes was probably not a bad call, and perhaps why they were the first to remove Chappelle's Show from their platform ahead of Viacom and HBO. HBO is a bit trickier to untangle. Chappelle had some bad blood there too, because when he pitched Chappelle's Show to the company, well, I'll let him tell it.
Did you know, before Chappelle's Show was at Comedy Central, I pitched that show to HBO. I told them what I wanted to do. Now, these are executives. All they have to do is say, yeah, we'll take it, or no, thank you, we won't. But they didn't say either of those things. They went too far. They said, literally, what do we need you for? That's what they told me, as they kicked me out of the office. What do we need you for? And here we are, all these years later, and they're streaming the very show that I was pitching to them. So I'm asking them, what do you need me for?
That left Viacom still streaming the show, and it never took the show off, but it did negotiate a new deal with Chappelle. At first, this seemed a tad counterintuitive. I don't know a thing about business or economics, but the supply of Chappelle's show was essentially cut by 2/3, and while Chappelle requested that his fans not watch the show, I suspect many did not get that memo.
Thousands of people.
And still had a demand for it. However, there was still a potential financial interest for Viacom here. By renegotiating, maybe it opens the door for more work with Chappelle. I kind of doubt that, but realistically, his fans might have been pretty upset with Viacom because of what he said. It could have potentially become a transitive boycott, if you will. If his fans listened and didn't watch the show, some people might outright not use CBS All Access, either by choice or just because it's not exactly teeming with great content at this point.
That's some cold shit.
Perhaps Chappelle did not entirely circumvent capitalism, but he most definitely manipulated it. Did these companies choose to make less money because it was the right thing to do? No, of course not. But did Chappelle force the companies to make that decision by exposing the right thing to do? Absolutely. There's a level of simplicity to this complex corporate level situation that I find fascinating, and I think it mirrors Chappelle's recent work. His comedy mostly tackles important discussions. He talks about race, sexuality, gender, whatever it may be, but you don't need a PhD to understand his takes.
Yeah, nigga, I found your papers.
I'm not saying he's always right on every hill, but it's simple yet entertaining. That's one of the biggest reasons I enjoy Michael Che so much. Aside from just being a hilarious person, he explains expansive issues with simple premises, and that's what makes a lot of his work so funny.
Gays were fighting for equal rights. Equal rights. Could you believe that's an actual stance you can have? You could be for equal rights? That means there's people out there saying, I think everybody should have the same rights as everyone else. And there's other people like, nah, son, I disagree.
Chappelle is quite different, mind you. Chappelle has a bit of a louder, wackier side, and he also has a much more subdued side when he chooses, but the core is relatively similar in how uncomplicated they both are.
It sounds like something that I would say.
It's worth noting that you don't have to subscribe to everything Chappelle believes in order to appreciate the way he went about formulating this deal. I know there are plenty of people that take issue with his stances and how he views certain topics. That's okay. Your opinion's valid.
And all this shit they talk about on the news about how divided the nation is, I don't believe it. I feel like nowadays we're getting a real good look at each other. It's wild because I even have insight into how the white community must have felt watching the black community go through the scourge of crack. Because I don't care either.
But I think it's hard to overlook how Chappelle focuses his work and his beliefs through a simple lens, and that's what we saw with this negotiation. I don't mean to make this out to be a David versus Goliath situation, mostly because it's not.
David, what the fuck?
When I first heard that Netflix took down Chappelle's show, I thought it was insane that one guy could actually change the business decision of a major corporation, but again, I don't really think that's what happened. I think when Chappelle was young and a bit less cunning, he took a deal he didn't realize would bite him so badly. That was the David versus Goliath, except that he didn't actually win.
This motherfucker is having a terrible go of it.
Then, over time, he wanted to right the wrong being done unto him by both the corporation and his naive former self, but was met with resistance.
It felt like I was lucky enough to eat Halle Berry's pussy. And whilst I was doing so, she fucking farted in my face, man.
He had exhausted his legal business level options. Even a man as valuable as Chappelle could not influence Viacom alone. While many might have tried to think outside the box, Chappelle stayed well within the box for his solution. He calls the viewers his bosses because he realizes how worthless his show is to Viacom or HBO or Netflix with no eyes on it. The point is, it doesn't really matter what made these companies take down Chappelle's show so Chappelle could get the money he deserved for his work. The point is, he made it happen with a solution that was unsuspecting, transparent, and simple. That's where he found his power.
I know how to solve my problems. You need to know how to solve your problems. You need to know where your power lies. You are Americans, so your power lies in each other.